Jen, welcome. I will ask you, if you will, just to introduce those sitting with you, and you have brought quite an entourage with you. So members of the council, if you look back, and those of you that are here with Ms. Cole and the Arts Commission, if you'll just wave your hand at us. Thank you. We are delighted to have all of you with us today. We will dispense with her introducing each of you by name, however, in the interest of the efficiency of our committees. Jen, will you introduce those with you?
Sure, and thank you, Chairman. To my right is the chair of our board, Paula Roberts, and to my left is our financial analyst, Ian Myers.
And then, Ms. Cole, can you operate within the mayor's proposed budget?
Yes, we can.
And the floor is open for you to make any other remarks about what you all are doing and what you all may or may not need.
Thank you for that opportunity, Chairman Stein. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge at least my commissioners that are here in the gallery. Mary Elena Ramos, Santi Tefel, Sherry West, Matt Fisher, Larry Keaton, Jane Alvis, and Lori Eskend, all of whom are with us today, and to acknowledge our friends in the gallery. If necessary, we can certainly support the budget as proposed. I want to take a couple moments of your time to sort of talk a little bit about that, though. During my tenure, we have consistently demonstrated that we will continue to perform as a high level as a department, even if our budget is reduced. In the last 7 years, or the last 4 years, my tenure is only 4, we've increased public art installations by 700%. We've fueled 35 new compositions, ballets, and artworks. We've launched Arttober, which is one of the Southeast's leading cultural events, and we've secured a national convention that will be here in just under 20 days that's about to generate $1.8 million in economic impact. Despite this, the department really has reached a tipping point where funding growth is necessary to continue the great strides that we've begun. Nashville is at its very core a creative community. We value artists and the work that they do as part of our quality of life and our overall economy. And in the last few years, I think it's pretty safe to say that we've experienced an explosion in the creative class and achieved international recognition as a global creative city. Any creative ecosystem of artists and nonprofits and arts educators and for-profit companies like galleries and music labels, each piece of that ecosystem has to be nurtured over time and fed for us to continue down that path as a red-hot IT city. We have over 41,000 creative sector jobs, and even during the recession, that sector grew at least 3% a year in terms of new job creation for the city. Nashvillians purchase more books, go to more shows, and consistently participate in the cultural economy more than the national average. We basically consume a lot of art. Increasingly, our tourism economy is anchored both in musical culture, but also in visual art, in craft, in food and fashion, all part of this larger ecosystem represented by the wonderful people in the gallery. This fuels our media brand, and it drives our corporate and personal relocations. Art really drives this city. Despite all this, the proposed budget reflects an investment in the arts that is effectively the same as it was in 2002. Since 2002, the population of Davidson County has grown by 9%. Most of that has been in seniors, children under the age of 18, Hispanics, and it has been both concentrated in the downtown core as well as in suburban neighborhoods like Antioch and Bellevue. I want you to close your eyes just for a sec and think about 2002. The Frisk Center was 1 year old. There was no Symphony Center, no Noah Liff Opera Center. In fact, 20% of the organizations we're currently funding in our community grants program did not exist 12 years ago. Organizations like Music for Seniors, serving the entire county and serving senior citizens with arts and culture, the Dance Theater of Tennessee providing dance and ballet in Donaldson, and Southern Word, which is working in some of our lowest performing schools in Antioch and North Nashville. Metro Arts, along with other departments, received our expected annual reductions during the recession, and we continue to do more with less, and will continue to do so if required to. However, as the economy and the city have bounced back, this type of cut does disproportionate harm to small departments who have no statutory ability to generate fees or earned revenue. We're doing as much as we can. Metro Arts budget growth and subsequent investments simply aren't tracking with our basic population or the demand for arts programming in the community and in your neighborhoods. In fact, we've seen a 40% increase in the number of people seeking funding, and an average requests are more than 70% of available funds. So on average, the city has granted out $1.8 million in the last several years in arts grants, and on average, we're getting almost $5 million in requests. The mayor and council budgets have tried to keep pace with other quality of life investments over the last few years, adding parks and library facilities and other programs that address our growing and changing cultural community. And even though Metro doesn't own the arts infrastructure in the community, I still believe it's pretty critical to invest in the arts as a key element of our quality of life. I know it's an investment that returns dividends to the brand, to the economy, to jobs, and to neighborhoods. To remain red hot, we have to invest in artists and creators, and I hope you'll consider our request to help Metro Arts stay bold. We need to do that by adding more money to the community grants program. We need to do that by adding more money and engagement in arts education and innovation in our direct programs and cultural research. And each of you knows that neighborhoods make this city strong. We need to seek new ways to invest in neighborhood-driven artist activities through microfunding targeted at neighborhood projects that affect each and every council district. Artists drive the city, and Metro Arts fuels artists. It's just that simple. I would encourage the council to consider any augmentation to the mayor's proposed budget that would support these priorities and artists living in your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Berry.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you, Jen, for being here. And thank you all to you for coming out today, too. It's great to see so many faces. I have a quick question for you. One of the reductions in your budget is the Metro Grants contribution to the arts by $5,000. What is the total grant budget before that $5,000 reduction?
It's always in the 1.8 space. It's 1.885,200. So.
Okay.
Well, we're 1.8 million.
Okay.
That's $1.8 million. Is that what
Yes.
that?
It's $1 million.
Give or take a little bit.
So,
Okay.
so currently we have about $1.8 million that we are able to give out in grants.
That's right.
And that reduction then, I think you talked that it will impact some of the smaller programs that you won't be able to give that $5,000 away.
In particular, just an example.
Sure, please.
Our arts access category, which funds programs targeted at seniors, veterans, low-income residents, and children, has had a dramatic increase in the number of applications. Most of those, that average grant is about $2,000, $3,000. And so just a small, we're having a growth in small-based grants, but even that $5,000 cut really does sort of tamp down the ability to reach out, particularly to neighborhoods and underserved populations.
So Chair, I would like to take this opportunity to request that we try to find that $5,000 and put that back into their budget at least. It seems like something that we can do to make sure that we have art in this community, so.
That is noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate everything you do. And I have just a couple of questions. Can you share a little bit about that fashion incubator?
The Fashion Incubator report that came out. So I think the city doesn't currently have a fashion incubator. We know that there was recently a report released by a loose coalition of folks working in the fashion industry. We know that fashion is actually growing jobs, and we have about 10 or 12 nationally recognized fashion brands here, like Imogen and Willie, and others. And there's actually just yesterday, the Chamber of Commerce and the Arts and Business Council and Metro Arts convened a group of fashion brands to sort of talk about what it is that they wanted and needed. One of them to sort of grow the industry and to grow that part of the economy. And so I think one of the leading ideas is to create some sort of incubator, whether that's to incubate what we would call pre-job services like pattern making and cutting and production, or to incubate a retail space where several designers and brands might sort of co-locate in a retail space to save cost. There are models in other cities like Minneapolis where they've really looked at that industry as a way to generate both high-tech and low-tech jobs. So, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. So I have one last question.
Absolutely.
What percentage of the projects that have been awarded to Nashville area artists?
Are you talking in the public art program?
Yes.
In the last 12 months, it's 75% of them have been to Nashville artists.
Good answer. Thank you.
Councilman Claiborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jennifer, for being here and for bringing the buses with you. Thank all of you folks who came.
We have a big bus from
In
Donald.
the handout that you provided for us, it shows the funds awarded, basically a red line straight across. So going back to 2012 on that line, was that it appears to be slightly less than 1.8. Do you have the number there, what that was?
The actual available in 2012 fiscal year
Yes.
was $1.867 million, $100.
And in 13?
1.890200. The council added $50,000 into the grant budget last year to
And
continue.
14 again, you told us what's that?
1.885.
Okay, so it went down slightly last year. And so this year, if you get what has been proposed, it would be what?
It would be 1.88. It would be basically 1.880. Does that make sense?
Just 5,000 less.
5,000 less.
Right. Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm going to one-up Councilor Berry and suggest that we give at least another 5,000 here. When I look at this red line and look at the blue line that's above it, it's apparent that we're not doing anything, we're not making any effort to keep pace with the demand. I know that we can't meet the requests that are there, but we can do a little bit. And when I think of all the other spending that we do, I don't think 10,000 added into this fund to give grants to organizations and groups that are deserving, I think that's appropriate. So
That will be added to the wish list.
thank you.
And if we call in many more, 5,000 here and 5,000 there will soon add up to even more money. We'll see if Councilman, no, please, not playing to the audience. Councilman Tigert.
I'll see your 10,000 and raise you. No. Jen, there is a temporary reduction in grant, in operating budget due to temporary reduction in grant funding listed as $100,900 from State Direct.
Yes.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so annually we seek funds from a variety of sources outside of Metro to augment our operating budget, including the State Arts Commission and the National Endowment from the Arts. But because that is not a promised or recurring set of funds, that shows as a reduction. So we have applied for those monies, and we won't know until after the beginning of our fiscal year whether.
So it is possible that money still may come through at some level.
It is possible. We just don't know on an annualized basis.
Okay. 1% for the Arts Fund, there was some controversy in the past, but now I'm assuming that the board's position is that 1% will follow the project unless it's a sewer plant or someplace that art may not be appropriate for it. So is that still the policy and plan?
That's our attempt. I think last year the capital budget had something of upwards of 90 projects, so it's not possible for us to do every single project, but certainly the board as well as the Public Art Committee look at geographic diversity, project diversity, and are really trying, I think, a dual path both to anchor art in neighborhoods with capital projects, as well as to sort of look at those opportunities to bring in international artists into the collection. And I feel like we're doing a good dual path there.
Do you have a map that will put a dot where the projects are by district and this type of thing? That may be helpful for some of us to see.
Yes, we do. It's on our website, and it maps it with Google Maps, and we actually just signed a contract for a mobile application that should soft launch in June, where you can actually download that right to your phone and create a walking tour.
Does that break it down by library, police precinct, or anything on that end? I guess what I'm getting at is where are the projects, other than the sheer volume that you talked about, where are the areas that are getting left out or not being, is it based on there's already projects in that area, or the bond was so small that 1% is such a little amount that you couldn't produce anything substantive?
I think that's the issue, and also the staffing capacity issue. So I have 3 staff who do public art project management, and there's simply no way to keep every percent project doing getting exactly 1%. I think that we're actually doing. I can actually send the council a breakdown of specifically what kinds of infrastructure where we've integrated public art. I would say the vast majority are parks, libraries, and public works projects. And on the mobile app and our website currently, it does pull up the project and project type and location. So,
right.
But I can do a report for you.
Thanks so much.
Councilman Bedney.
Thank you, Chair. So you and I in the past talked about the fact that Nolensville Road is a gateway into Nashville from Rutherford County and Williamson County, and maybe having an opportunity to create some kind of an art piece that will frame and indicate that concept. And I just want to let you know that the state just approved funding for widening of Nolensville Road, and this will be a good opportunity for, I don't know how will that happen, but for the city and the state to work together in some kind of an installation at the entrance of the city. So
we'd certainly have that conversation. Councilman Claiborne and Representative Jernigan and I met with TDOT not too long ago about a long-range project happening in Donaldson that is mostly state and federal funded. So my team is happy to sit down and sort of talk about what those opportunities might look like and see if it will eventually be a 1% project. The other thing I would say is that we're actively looking, particularly in neighborhoods where not a lot of capital construction is happening, on other ways outside of public art where we can activate neighborhoods. And one of the things that we're finding is that grant funding is one lever, public art is another lever, particularly in our outlying counties where we don't have a lot of formal infrastructure for arts and culture. We're really looking at opportunities to, we hope eventually with funding, to create a micro-funding program that would really provide very small amounts of money, $500, $600, $700 to artists in neighborhoods who can do those kind of temporary activation projects that you know make a huge difference at the neighborhood level. And we do think that that's a future direction that we have to look in. To your point, to sort of activate things. Sometimes we can activate them with a permanent thing like a piece of public art. Other times we have to look at temporary activation that really sort of tells the story of that neighborhood. So.
Councilman Tiger.
I forgot to ask, do you all have a private fundraising arm, a nonprofit element of the Arts Commission?
We do not. The charter allows, not the charter, the code allows us, you have all granted us permission to directly fundraise, so we actually can do that without a C3, and we have done that, for example, for our convention this year.
Would a 501c3 help on private donations if someone knew that they were getting a tax deduction as opposed to just a feel-good deduction to the city?
It would. I think the only balance that we try to strike is to make sure that we don't put ourselves in direct competition with all those lovely people out there who run arts nonprofits. And so I think it would allow us to do some targeted things, for example, arts education around public art, something that's not going to be done in the nonprofit sector.
Thank you.
There was a nonprofit model with the Arts Commission that was disbanded some 15, 16 years ago. Councilwoman Dowell.
Thank you. I want to tell you thank you for the meeting we had out in the Southeast area about the art grants. It helped to explain a lot about your budget, but I had one question that I was wondering. How do we determine like the actual budget for each project? So I know how we allocate the money to the Arts Commission, but when we determine what projects we're going to fund in the communities for art, how do we determine a budget for each project? How is that done?
Well, first, thanks for those meetings. I'm glad that they were successful. Are you talking about 1% for art projects or grant-based projects?
Well, I understand the 1%, but for example, we funded with capital projects 1%. I got that.
Right.
So when you have your budget, and we decided to put a art piece out in Southeast Nashville.
Right.
So how do we determine how much money we're going to allocate per art project?
Usually, our baseline is to look at 1% of the total project budget. So if it's a $5 million project, it's probably going to be a $50,000 project. Does that make sense?
That does, but the second question I have is, I know we spoke about this before, that we fund art through that 1%, but when we've had like multiple projects out in one area, I know that because we've had multiple capital projects in that area, it doesn't necessarily mean that the art will be in that area. For example, we've had multiple projects in our area, and this is our first piece of art.
Right.
But we've had 3 schools built now, recreation centers, and so forth since we decided this is how we're going to fund the art programs. So based upon all of those capital projects, 1% would be more than, So I was just curious, how do we determine,
Well, I understand your question. I think one of the things that we're trying to look at with 40 councilmanic districts and so many capital projects happening and so many things generating into percent is how can we be as equitable as possible in the projects that we do. So one of the examples, for example, is it's incredibly costly to retrofit something once it's generated into the fund. So we try to find the high-level opportunities that have not been replicated in neighborhoods to put capital with construction, to put public art with new construction. Other thing we have actually done is to try to find opportunities that provide opportunities for local artists in things like the bike rack program that are cheaper for us to go retrofit within neighborhoods. So I think, Council Lady Dow, the answer is that we need to continue down the path, and I think that that's what the board has really approved as a path of looking for these projects where it is cost effective for us to augment and go into neighborhoods that are not tracking with a new project, and also look for those new project opportunities that are going to distribute the public art resources around the county. I hope that helps. Is that not answering the question?
Yeah, it does help, but I was just going back to, since we're not using the model of the project being funded in the district and using that 1% toward art for that project, because, for example, Cambridge High School, they said we allocated 1% there, and I still have people in the district that ask, when are we going to get that art? You know, is it rolled into the Southeast project, or do we still have that money available to do another project in our area? So, or is it just because we didn't have a place to put it at the school and it didn't happen, is it gone?
It's not gone, it's in the fund. The Cambridge project happened before I was on board, so I can't actually tell you the history of that specific incident. I don't know why or why not we chose not to do Cambridge. I will tell you that traditionally we have not worked with public art in schools because it becomes a maintenance issue, and because public art schools are only open 9 months of the year, so they're not generally available to the complete public, so that's been an internal decision. I think what you're asking is, does each council district kind of have its 1% in reserve based on the projects that have been allocated there? And that's not exactly how we sort of look at the issue. We are very intent on making sure more art is tracking with where our population is transitioning. We don't necessarily have the ability to retrofit and sort of go backwards in terms of the fund, though. Does that make sense?
It does. Maybe we can talk offline, because I'm just, with the budget we had for our Southeast project, it doesn't correlate or track with the amount of money that was spent. So the people always ask, like, for example, what is the budget for an art piece? If we decide, like, we're building Bellevue Library and Southeast Library, how do we determine that we're going to spend X amount of dollars on art for the Bellevue Library? How do we determine this dollar amount for the Southeast? Because between the projects that we have, it's more than 1%, it's less than 1% being spent on the art that we're installing there. So that's what I'm saying, like, it's less than. So where's the difference going and that kind of thing? But we can talk offline, because I don't want to, keep going on. But I was just curious about, how do we determine a budget? Maybe we can talk about it offline.
I will say, in general, when the commission approves a project for new construction and a public art piece to go with it, our general litmus test is 1%. The Bellevue Library is a good example where that project is about 1% of the total budget of the new construction. In terms of projects where we're going back, we don't necessarily have a rule or a rule of thumb, but I'd be happy to talk offline with you.
Thank you. It will certainly surprise all my colleagues that I have an interest in the things that you're doing. I think it might be helpful and very interesting to this council if you might, in the next few days, outline what a neighborhood micro funding program would look like, and put some pen to paper and give us a feel for what it would look like and also what it would cost, and that we might be able to take a look at in this process.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank all of you all for being here. And as planning comes down, we will take just a 2-minute recess, because I suspect that at least a few of you won't want to stay for planning and the rest of our agenda. So thank you all.